Well, hey there, it's Thursday again.
Yes, it is.
And welcome back to another Echoes from the Source.
Always a pleasure to dive in.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into some really transformative ideas, straight from a profound book
Oh, yes.
called An Intimate Note to a Sincere Seeker by Gurudev.
Love that book.
Yeah, we're going to unpack a specific chapter
Okay.
that uses a powerful and vivid image, the metaphor of fire,
Fire. Yeah.
to illuminate how we experience the world
Right.
through our senses and how we live our lives.
Yeah.
Basically, the core concept here is this,
Okay.
just like fire, which can bring us warmth and light,
Right.
but also can become this source of immense destruction and pollution.
Yeah.
Our senses and that inner energy we all possess can be directed in countless ways.
Absolutely.
You know, think about the difference between a controlled flame in your fireplace
Oh, yeah.
and like a raging wildfire.
Right.
Same fundamental element.
Yeah.
Wildly different outcomes.
Totally different.
Right. So for you, our listener, on this deep dive,
Okay.
the mission today is to really explore this with us.
Right.
We want to understand how you can consciously engage with the world around you,
Mm-hmm.
and even more importantly, how you can manage that inner fire within yourself.
That's a great way to put it.
How do you fuel it for positive growth?
Yeah.
Steer clear of feeling overwhelmed or burned out by it,
Right.
and maybe even spark a few of those aha moments along the way.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into this fundamental idea,
Right.
starting with the very nature of fire itself.
Right.
What's so fascinating right from the start is this premise.
Okay.
Fire itself is neutral.
Right.
It's neither inherently good nor bad.
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of resonate with how we should consider our own senses
Oh, I see what you mean.
and the energy that animates us?
It totally does. Yeah.
Think back to like ancient traditions.
Oh, yeah.
Fire was both deeply revered,
Mm.
seen as the sacred purifier, burning away impurities and rituals, almost like a symbolic cleansing of the ego.
I see.
Yet it was also deeply feared
Oh, yeah.
for its capacity for utter destruction.
Right.
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see that across so many cultures.
Mm-hmm.
This sacred flame representing transformation,
Yeah.
almost like an alchemical process
Mm-hmm.
of shedding the old
Yeah.
to make way for the new.
Yeah.
But then that same element left unchecked
Oh, yeah.
becomes this terrifying force.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a perfect reflection of what can happen inside of us.
Absolutely.
We have this inner fire,
Yeah.
as Gurudev describes it,
Right.
representing our passions,
Yeah.
our desires,
Right.
our raw energy.
That raw. Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you.
Right.
What you choose to feed, that inner fire,
Right.
has profound and tangible consequences.
Yeah.
So if you're constantly fueling it with negativity,
Mm.
things like anger,
Right.
greed, envy,
Mm-hmm.
it creates this internal pollution. As the source material puts it,
Yeah.
think about the residue,
Okay.
the restlessness,
Yeah.
the anxiety,
Yeah.
that gnawing feeling of being disconnected.
It's like that negativity is toxic fuel.
Yes.
It's not just warming the fire.
Mm-hmm.
It's choking it with smoke
Yeah.
of anxiety and disconnection.
It's like a sputtering, smoky fire that just fills the room,
Oh, yeah.
your inner world,
Mhm.
with unpleasantness.
It's true.
But then the contrast is so striking
Yeah.
when you fuel that same inner fire
Okay.
with kindness, with
Yeah.
wisdom, with
Mhm.
love.
Right.
It's like switching to the cleanest fuel imaginable.
It is.
It radiates warmth.
It does.
It gives off light,
Absolutely.
almost like that perfect image of a camphor flame,
Oh, I love that.
you know,
Yeah.
burning purely, leaving behind only light and fragrance.
So beautiful.
So it really comes down to what we're each throwing onto our own internal flames,
it does.
what we're feeding it. And this leads us directly to the crucial role of our senses,
Okay.
which are also likened to fire. They are constantly consuming and
Right.
processing absolutely everything we expose
Right.
them to.
Yeah.
This has a very direct and immediate impact on your consciousness, on how you perceive,
Right.
and ultimately experience the world around you.
Yeah.
So you really need to be mindful of
Sure.
what you are feeding these sensory fires.
Yeah.
It's not just about the food you eat.
Mm-hmm.
It's about absolutely everything
Everything.
you take in through your senses.
Right.
So let's break that down with some specific examples for each sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to make this really concrete for you.
I like that.
Consider what you see.
Okay.
Are you constantly bombarding yourself with negative news cycles?
Yeah.
Violent movies,
Right.
things that leave you feeling agitated and anxious?
It's like throwing gasoline on the fire.
It is, right.
Yeah.
Or are you consciously choosing to engage with more
Right.
uplifting,
Yeah.
beautiful, inspiring content?
Right.
Think about what you hear.
Okay.
Are you constantly surrounded by negative conversations?
Right.
Maybe harmful or critical music,
Right.
things that bring you down?
Yeah.
Or are you actively filling your auditory space
Yeah.
with positive affirmations,
Mm-hmm.
constructive dialogue sounds that soothe and uplift?
Yeah.
It's all fuel
It is.
for that inner fire of yours.
Yeah.
Then there's what you eat.
Okay.
The text highlights the distinction between
Alright.
tamasic and sattvic foods.
Okay.
Think of tamasic foods,
Okay.
things that are often stale,
Right.
processed, or
Mhm.
heavy,
Okay.
as dampening the flame,
I see.
making it sluggish and smoky,
Yeah.
potentially leading to lethargy and negativity.
Oh, yeah.
They really weigh down your inner fire.
Yeah, they do.
On the other hand, sattvic foods,
Okay.
fresh, pure, and nourishing,
Right.
act as clean-burning fuel, providing sustained and clear energy
Mhm.
for your inner fire.
I like that.
And don't forget what you speak.
Okay.
Your words hold immense power.
They do?
Harsh or negative speech can be incredibly destructive,
Yeah.
burning bridges,
Right.
creating negativity,
Yeah.
both for yourself and others.
Right.
But kind, uplifting speech can build connections and foster harmony.
It really can.
It's a different kind of fuel,
Yeah.
but just as potent for your inner state.
Right.
And perhaps most crucially,
Okay.
what you think,
Yeah.
your thoughts are the constant underlying fuel source
They are.
for that inner fire.
Mm-hmm.
Repetitive negative thoughts
Yeah.
can create this constant internal turmoil, kind of
Sure.
self-inflicted burning.
Yeah.
But when you cultivate positive and
Mhm.
constructive thinking, it's
Wow.
like shining a light on your path,
It is.
illuminating possibilities and creating warmth within.
Absolutely.
So the key takeaway here for you is this: being truly mindful of what you are constantly consuming through
Mhm.
your senses.
Right.
It's the very first and most crucial step
It is.
in learning how to harness that inner fire,
Yeah.
to direct it intentionally rather than letting it run wild
Right.
and potentially cause harm.
Absolutely.
So this naturally brings us to the duality we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
The two distinct sides of fire.
Okay.
Its incredible capacity for both creation
Mm-hmm.
and utter destruction.
Right.
Fire is absolutely fundamental to life as we know it.
It is.
Provides warmth,
Yeah.
allows us to cook our food,
Yeah.
powers industries.
Right.
It's been essential for all technological progress.
Oh, absolutely.
But as you well know,
Yeah.
that same essential element,
Mhm.
if it's not contained, if it's not used wisely and with respect,
Right.
can be utterly devastating.
It can.
It can destroy homes, forests, entire communities
Yeah.
without hesitation or remorse.
Right.
And this external duality mirrors your own internal landscape perfectly.
It does.
Think about ambition and drive.
Right.
When fueled by a healthy sense of purpose,
Yeah.
it can lead you to achieve remarkable things,
Mm-hmm.
to create and contribute in truly meaningful ways.
Right.
But if that same ambition
Yeah.
is fueled purely by ego and greed,
Yeah.
it can become all-consuming,
Yeah.
ultimately leading to your own downfall
Right.
and potentially harming those around you.
Yeah.
It's the same with love, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
The fire of love can be so incredibly nurturing,
It can.
fostering deep connections
Right.
and profoundly enriching your life.
Yeah.
But when it's mixed with attachment,
Mm-hmm.
with a desperate need to control another person,
Yeah.
it can become a source of immense suffering and pain for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
This is where Gurudev's question really hits home.
Okay.
He asks directly,
All right.
are you the fire that creates smoke and pollution,
Mm-hmm.
or the flame of camphor
Right.
that creates light and fragrance? It's a powerful moment of self-reflection.
It is.
He's prompting in each of us.
Yeah.
It really makes you pause and consider
Hmm.
the fundamental quality
Yeah.
of your own inner fire, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And the text goes on to say that
Okay.
a saint or a truly realized being is
Yeah.
like that pure flame
Right.
burning brightly,
Yeah.
but without creating any of that toxic residue.
Right.
They simply radiate warmth and the beautiful fragrance of love.
That's a beautiful image.
And the truly encouraging message here
Yeah.
is that we all have the inherent potential
You do?
to move in that direction.
Yeah.
By consciously engaging your senses in goodness and acts of kindness,
Right.
and by diligently cultivating self-awareness,
Yeah.
you can gradually transform your own inner fire,
You can.
becoming more and more like that pure, radiant flame.
I love that.
So how do you actually make that shift in your own life?
Right.
This is where the core concept of sanyama comes into play.
Okay.
Can you explain a little bit more about what that truly means? Yeah. In this context for our listener?
Yeah, so sanyama,
Yeah.
as the text beautifully explains, is this deep and profound discipline
Yeah.
of both your senses and your mind. It's fundamentally about
Yeah.
consciously channeling your energy
Okay.
in a way that actively fosters growth and positivity rather than passively allowing it to lead to destruction or stagnation.
Yeah.
It's the art of being truly aware of absolutely everything you consume,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, and physically,
Okay.
and making sure it's genuinely nourishing you
Yeah.
rather than causing you harm.
So it's not about just suppressing everything.
No, not at all.
It's not about trying to become this
Yeah.
emotionless, detached being.
No, and that's a crucial distinction for you to understand.
Yeah.
Sanjama isn't about rigid suppression. It's about conscious
Yeah.
and intentional direction. Think back to our fire analogy.
Okay.
You don't want to extinguish the fire in your home altogether
Right.
because it provides essential warmth and light.
Yeah.
You want to skillfully control it,
Right.
to harness it for useful purposes,
Yeah.
like cooking your meals
Okay.
or heating your home effectively.
Right.
Similarly, Sanyama is about learning to thoughtfully direct your energy, your passions, your desires, towards things that will ultimately benefit you
Yeah.
and those around you. Things like personal growth,
Yeah.
creativity, and selfless service to others.
Okay. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
When you put it that way. It's about you being the conductor of your own internal orchestra,
I love that.
rather than just letting all the instruments play randomly
Right.
and out of tune.
Yeah.
So what are some really practical ways
Okay.
our listener can actually start to cultivate this sanyama in their daily life to begin harnessing that inner fire more effectively?
The text offers some really actionable and concrete steps
Okay.
that you can start implementing right away.
Right.
The first, which we touched on earlier,
Yeah.
is to be incredibly mindful of absolutely everything you consume,
Okay.
whether it's the news you read,
Right.
the conversations you engage in, or even the very thoughts you allow to take root and grow in your mind.
Right.
Choose wisely,
Yeah.
because that is the fundamental fuel
Right.
for your inner fire.
Another really interesting point that stands out is to actively transform anger into constructive action.
Oh, yeah.
It recognizes that anger is a potent form of fire,
Right.
powerful surge of energy within you.
Yeah.
But instead of letting it burn destructively,
Right.
perhaps lashing out at others or dwelling in resentment, how can you consciously channel that energy into positive change in the world?
Right.
Maybe it's advocating for something you deeply believe in,
Yeah.
or taking concrete action to address an injustice you see. I love that.
And then there's the vital practice
Okay.
of cultivating inner stillness. Just as a steady flame burns brighter and far more clearly,
It does.
a centered and calm mind radiates clarity and inner peace.
Yeah.
Practices like regular meditation can be incredibly helpful
Absolutely.
in cultivating that essential inner stillness.
The text also beautifully highlights
Yeah.
the profound importance of engaging in selfless service to others.
All right.
It makes the insightful point that a fire that warms many is far more valuable and fulfilling than one that simply burns in isolation.
Right.
Using your passion, your energy to uplift those around you
Right.
seems like a really powerful and meaningful way
It does.
to direct that inner fire in a positive direction.
Absolutely.
And of course, actively cultivating sanyama itself through consistent practices like meditation and conscious self-discipline is absolutely key.
Right.
Learning to intentionally direct your senses
Towards growth. Towards continuous learning. Yeah.
towards positive and enriching experiences,
Right.
rather than just being passively pulled by
Right.
fleeting distractions and impulses.
Yeah.
Expressing genuine gratitude
Okay.
is another powerful practice that stands out. It's described as a sacred fire that actively burns away negativity within you by consciously focusing on what you already have, appreciating the good in your life, rather than constantly dwelling on what you lack. You actually fuel feelings of contentment and lasting joy.
You do.
Which in turn profoundly affects the quality and radiance of your inner fire.
Oh, for sure.
Breathwork is also specifically mentioned as a remarkably powerful tool. Your breath is so intimately and directly connected to your inner energy levels and your emotional state.
Absolutely.
Deep conscious breathing exercises, often referred to as pranayama, can really help to regulate those intense emotions.
Absolutely.
And bring a vital sense of balance to your inner fire.
And finally, the importance of consciously surrounding yourself with positivity. The people you choose to spend your time with, the environment you immerse yourself in. These external factors have a really significant and often underestimated impact on your overall mental and emotional state.
It's true.
Actively choosing to be around positive influences can create a supportive environment that helps nurture that positive inner fire within you.
So if we connect this back to the fundamental inevitability of change, which we've explored in other discussions, you can really see how samyama plays such a crucial and supportive role in navigating those often turbulent changes with grace and resilience. Because change can certainly feel like a raging firestorm in your life sometimes, can it?
It really can,
Resisting change creates a tremendous amount of internal friction and tension.
It does.
It's kind of inner burning and struggle. But cultivating samyama helps you foster that deep inner stability.
It does.
So that even when things around you are constantly shifting and evolving, you can remain centered and grounded, embracing change with a sense of faith and acceptance, rather than desperately fighting against it, ultimately opens up so many more unexpected possibilities for you.
Yeah, it does.
So samyama is really about you mastering that inner fire, that core inner energy, your thoughts, your emotions, your deepest desires, all for the higher purpose of your own growth and well-being.
Exactly.
It's not about rigidly clamping down on everything, but about that conscious awareness and self-mastery that you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
Think again about the illuminating versus the destructive aspects of fire we discussed. Your thoughts and actions have that exact same inherent potential.
Absolutely.
Samyama helps you consciously and intentionally choose the illuminating path in your life. The text actually defines 3 key and interconnected aspects of samyama dharana, which is the power of focused concentration, jhana, which is the deepening of that focus into sustained meditation, samadhi, which is a profound state of absorption or ultimate unity.
Absolutely.
Wow, those sound like incredibly deep and transformative states.
They are.
They are.
And they work together in a progressive way. This sequential deepening of your focus and awareness is what gradually transforms your ingrained tendencies, refines your inner energy, and ultimately elevates your consciousness to new levels.
Without samyama, as the text clearly points out, that uncontrolled inner fire can lead to all sorts of challenges. Impulsive actions you later deeply regret. A scattered and restless mind that struggles to focus. Persistent emotional instability. Feeling constantly mentally fatigued and drained. And even unhealthy attachments and addictive behaviors. It really paints a vivid picture of the potential consequences of letting that inner fire rage unchecked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's revisit those practical techniques for actively cultivating samyama in your daily life. Maybe we can delve a little deeper into the significance of some of them. Breath work or pranayama is absolutely fundamental.
It is.
Specific and intentional breathing techniques can help to balance the different subtle energies within you, effectively calming an agitated mind or gently energizing a sluggish one. And what about mindful speech? That seems particularly relevant and important in our often hyper-connected and fast-paced world.
It is.
Mindful speech. Consciously practicing sanyama in your communication with others involves really taking a moment to consider your words before you actually speak them. Asking yourself those key questions. Is what I'm about to say true? Is it truly necessary to say it? And is it ultimately kind and constructive? This seemingly simple practice can prevent so much unnecessary conflict and negativity in your relationships and in your own inner world. Fasting is another interesting practice. It's often primarily thought of in terms of physical health and detoxification. But the text also emphasizes the significant mental and emotional discipline that it cultivates within you.
And it can extend beyond just the food you consume. Digital fasting. Intentionally taking regular breaks from screens and constant online connection, or even consciously choosing periods of silence. Can be incredibly beneficial in gaining greater mental clarity and strengthening your self-control.
Emotional mastery. Learning to consciously respond to your emotions rather than simply reacting impulsively. That feels like a lifelong practice.
It is,
for so many of us.
Consistent meditation is an incredibly powerful tool in developing that crucial capacity.
By learning to observe your emotions without immediate judgment or getting swept away by them, you create a vital space between the initial feeling and your subsequent reaction, allowing you to thoughtfully choose a more skillful and constructive response.
And of course, meditation itself is presented as the ultimate and ongoing practice of sanyama, steadily training your mind to become more focused and resilient.
So it's not just these more formal practices, though, right?
No.
Sanyama is something that can be actively applied to your everyday life.
Absolutely.
With all sorts of seemingly mundane contexts. Think about it in your work life. Intentionally practicing focused attention on a single task at hand rather than constantly multitasking and feeling scattered and overwhelmed.
In your personal relationships, it's about truly and actively listening to others and speaking with genuine awareness and empathy rather than just reacting emotionally to what they're saying. Even something as simple as eating with mindful awareness. Savoring each bite. Paying attention to your body's signals instead of just mindlessly consuming food is a subtle but powerful act of sanyama in your daily life.
Setting healthy boundaries with technology, consciously limiting distractions, even prioritizing true rest and genuine unwinding. These are all practical ways you can apply this transformative discipline in your daily routines. And ultimately, what is the deeper and more profound purpose of all this? Where does this ongoing journey of sanyama ultimately lead you?
The text beautifully suggests that the highest purpose is nothing less than spiritual awakening and a deep and abiding sense of inner peace.
Powerful.
It's about cultivating a profound harmony between your senses, your mind, and your emotions. It's not about rigidly suppressing your natural desires or emotions, but about understanding them deeply and learning to skillfully direct them in a way that truly supports your highest growth and overall well-being.
It uses that beautiful and evocative analogy of a steady candle flame in a dark room.
I love that.
It simply burns steadily, providing consistent light without struggle or flicker. That's the kind of inner radiance and tranquility that consistent practice of sanyama can ultimately help you. One of the key ideas that comes up again and again in these texts is that this inner fire, it's not inherently good or bad in itself. It's more like this raw, potent force, the kind that can create incredible things or cause a lot of damage depending on how it's directed.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, think about it. Fire can warm us, cook our food, or it can burn down a whole forest. It's all about how we use it, how we contain it. And that's the challenge, isn't it? To learn to wield this powerful force within us constructively.
Absolutely. And that's where I think Gurudev's teachings offer us some real guidance. He touches on some core concepts that we're going to explore today, like really understanding the true nature of our desires.
And the power, the immense power of mindful speech, really thinking about the words that come out of our mouths.
And then there's this idea of transforming our anger. Not just suppressing it, but actually like transforming it into something else.
Yeah, and how challenges, the difficult stuff we go through, can actually be opportunities for growth. I mean, that's a big one.
It is. And finally, there's this central idea of sanyama that Gurudev keeps coming back to, this sort of key to mastering it all, learning to control and direct all these inner energies.
Yeah.
It's a lot, right? But by the end of our conversation today, we're hoping you'll have a much clearer sense of how to cultivate an inner fire that, as Gurudev puts it so beautifully, brings light and fragrance to your life and to the world around you. Okay, so let's start with something pretty fundamental to the human experience: desire. I mean, we all have desires, right?
We do. And what's fascinating here is that these sources we're looking at present desire as this really dynamic thing, this kind of push and pull, this inherent duality. Like, on the one hand, it's recognized as the fundamental force that propels us forward. It's the spark behind, creativity, innovation, and progress.
Right. Think about it. Without desire, where would we get art, scientific discoveries, even just the basic ambition to get out of bed in the morning?
Exactly. I mean, it's the engine behind so much of what we do as human beings.
Yeah. But then, as we all know, there's that other side of desire, the one that can get a little, messy.
Oh, yeah. When desire takes over, becomes uncontrolled, it can quickly lead to restlessness, this feeling of never being satisfied, always wanting more, and ultimately, suffering. We end up chasing after things, thinking they'll bring us happiness, and we just end up feeling emptier.
It's a classic wanting what we don't have thing. We get the new phone, the new car, and then what? We're already looking at the next thing, never really feeling content.
Precisely. And that's where these teachings offer a really valuable perspective. They emphasize the importance of finding contentment. But it's really important to understand it. This isn't about suppressing all desire. It's not about becoming some passive, desireless being.
No, that's not it at all.
It's more about, learning to wisely manage the intensity of our desires. It's about keeping that inner fire, so to speak, contained.
So that it provides warmth and energy instead of burning everything down.
Exactly. Like a hearth fire that keeps you warm instead of a wildfire raging out of control.
I love that analogy. So how do we actually do that? How do we find that balance? Well, these sources really highlight self-awareness as the crucial first step. Taking a pause, actually looking at what's fueling our desires.
Yeah, getting curious about our own motivations. Like, why do I want this so badly? What need am I trying to fulfill?
Right, and asking ourselves those tough questions, like, will this thing actually bring me lasting happiness? Or is it just a temporary fix? Will it contribute to my growth and well-being? Or is it going to trap me in the cycle of wanting more, more, more?
It's about understanding the difference between those desires that uplift us and those that kind of entangle us.
I love that. Like, for example, the desire to learn a new skill, something that really excites you. That could be an uplifting desire, right? Even if it's challenging.
Right, because it's leading to growth. And then, on the other hand, you have something like, constantly scrolling through social media. That often leads to feeling empty afterwards. It's like a quick hit of dopamine, but it doesn't really nourish us in the long run.
Exactly. And the key takeaway here, I think, is that we can learn to differentiate between these types of desires by paying attention to the lasting effects they have on us. How do we feel after we've indulged in a particular desire?
Right. Does it leave you feeling energized and content or kind of drained and empty? That's a really good gauge. And then what's really beautiful is how these sources suggest that when we consciously direct our desires, our energy, towards things like personal growth, acts of service to others, or pursuing deeper knowledge, that's when desire actually transforms into something much more meaningful.
It becomes this sacred fire that actually purifies and uplifts us.
I love that. It's about consciously choosing where we focus that energy, that drive.
Okay, so moving on from the fire of desire, let's talk about another really potent force we wield every single day: the fire of our speech. I mean, this part really resonated with me because it highlights how our words have this incredible power to either create hope and connection or just absolutely destroy trust and create distance.
It's true. Words can build bridges or they can burn them down.
That's a big responsibility, right? I mean, think about it. We're constantly sending these little sparks of energy out into the world through our words.
Absolutely. If we're thinking about this fire metaphor, right, our words are like these little sparks of fire that can either light the way or start a huge blaze.
And so Gurudev really emphasizes this idea of mindful speech. It's not just about what we say, but how we say it, the tone we use, the intention behind our words. It's about using our language to build bridges, to create understanding, to foster harmony, not to create conflict or, spread negativity.
It makes you really think about how you're communicating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are you speaking from a place of kindness and compassion? Or are you, letting your anger or frustration dictate your words?
Right. And I really appreciated that the texts also talk about the power of silence, which I think is often overlooked. Sometimes what we don't say can be just as powerful, if not more so, than what we do say.
It's true. Silence can be really powerful. Create space for reflection, for truly listening to others.
It allows things to settle, And then you can respond with more clarity.
Exactly. Sometimes too many words just muddy the waters.
They do. And then we get to these really practical filters for our speech. These 3 questions that Gurudev suggests we ask ourselves before we speak. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind?
Oh yeah, those 3. If we could all just pause for a second and run our words through those filters before they come out of our mouths.
Imagine how much more peaceful the world would be.
Right.
It's such a simple but powerful practice.
It is. And the text suggests that words that pass through these filters, the true, necessary, and kind words, they carry a certain light. It's such a beautiful way to put it.
It is. And those 3 filters, they're not just random. You actually see those same principles in other communication models that are designed to reduce conflict and foster understanding, like nonviolent communication, for example. It's all about being mindful of the impact our words have on others.
Right. Not just about conveying information, but about contributing to the well-being of ourselves and others. It's about making sure the fire of our speech, illuminates and warms, rather than burning and destroying.
Okay, so now let's talk about another pretty fiery aspect of our inner world. Anger. I think this is something that many people struggle with, right? How to deal with anger in a healthy way.
Yeah, anger can be a tricky one.
It can, but these sources acknowledge that anger is a completely natural human emotion. It's not inherently bad.
No, it's not. But like everything else we've been talked about, it has this duality to it. This potential for both constructive action and destructive outbursts.
Right. And the key here isn't about pretending that we don't feel anger. It's not about becoming some, perfectly calm and serene being who never gets angry.
Oh, no. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
And actually, the texts actually point out that trying to suppress anger, trying to bury it, can actually be just as harmful in the long run as exploding and letting it all out.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater, Eventually, it's going to pop up with even more force.
Exactly. So the goal is not to suppress it, but to understand it. To work with it.
And the idea that's presented here is this idea of channeling that energy, that intense energy of anger, towards something positive.
So instead of letting it consume us, we can use it to fuel positive change.
Right. Like maybe there's some injustice in the world that really makes you angry. We'll use that anger to take action, to speak out, to try to make a difference.
Exactly. Or maybe it's something more personal, like setting healthy boundaries in a relationship. Anger can actually be a powerful motivator for change.
It can. But of course, there are also those moments when we need to cool down that initial fire of anger so that we don't say or do something we regret.
Right. So we need tools to help us manage those moments when anger flares up.
Exactly. And these sources actually mention a few really practical techniques, like, for example, just taking a few deep breaths.
Oh, yeah. That can be so helpful. Just slowing down the breath, giving yourself a moment to pause.
It interrupts that fight or flight response, gives you a little bit of space. And then there's meditation, which can help us cultivate a more mindful awareness of our emotions.
Right. So instead of being completely swept away by anger, we can observe it with a little more detachment.
And then what's really important, as the texts point out, is understanding the underlying root of our anger.
Oh, yeah, that's key. Because anger is often a symptom of something deeper going on.
Exactly. Like maybe it stems from unmet expectations we have.
Or attachments we're clinging to.
Or maybe it's even old hurts and wounds that haven't been fully processed and healed.
By becoming aware of these deeper causes, we can actually start to transform the anger at its source, rather than just constantly trying to manage the symptoms.
I love that. It's like getting to the root of the problem, rather than just pruning the branches.
Exactly. And this whole idea of transforming anger, of working with it rather than against it, really leads us into this next section, which is all about the fire of transformation.
This is one of my favorite parts, because it connects this ancient symbolism of fire as a purifier, which you see in so many spiritual traditions, to the challenges and difficulties we all face in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, fire is often associated with, burning away impurities, refining precious metals, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And the text suggests that we can actually choose to view the challenges we face in our lives through that same lens.
So not as obstacles meant to break us, but as opportunities for growth.
Right. As fires that can either destroy us or refine us, depending on how we approach them.
It's a powerful way to look at it, isn't it? It kind of reframes those difficult moments.
It does. And then there's this concept of surrender that comes up, which I think can be easily misunderstood.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely not about giving up.
No, not at all.
It's more about, accepting what is, trusting the process of life.
Right. It's about recognizing that even these really difficult experiences, they hold within them the potential for growth and learning.
It's like surrendering to the fire, allowing it to transform us, rather than resisting it and getting burned.
I love that. And the text actually suggests that this active choice of surrender, it can help us burn away those negative aspects of ourselves that are holding us back.
Like fear, ego, those rigid attachments to outcomes.
Exactly. It's like the fire is clearing the path for a truer, more authentic self to emerge.
Yeah, like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Okay, so we've talked about the fire of desire, the fire of our speech, the fire of anger, and this transformative potential of life's challenges. But now we get to this really central concept that Gurudev introduces, sanyama. It's presented as the key to mastering it all, this method for actually transforming all those inner fires we've been exploring.
Sanyama. It's a big one. And what's really important to understand is that it's not about suppressing these energies, It's not about pretending we don't have desires or anger or impulses.
Right. It's not about becoming some sort of emotionless robot.
No, definitely not. Because as we've seen, trying to suppress those energies can actually backfire. They can end up manifesting in even more unhealthy ways.
It's like that beach ball analogy again.
Exactly. So sanyama is more about cultivating a conscious and mindful relationship with our inner fire.
It's about learning to direct its power with intention and wisdom.
It's about finding that delicate balance between discipline and spontaneity, effort and surrender. It's pretty nuanced.
It is. But the text suggests that practices like meditation, selfless service to others, and deep self-inquiry, these are essential tools for developing this inner mastery. It's about becoming more attuned to our own internal landscape.
Right, getting to know ourselves better, understanding the patterns of our thoughts and emotions.
So that we can respond to them with more wisdom instead of just reacting out of habit.
Exactly. It's about becoming more conscious, more intentional in our responses to life's challenges.
And I really love this idea that's presented, that even our senses, which can sometimes feel like these uncontrolled fires that are constantly seeking external stimulation, that they can actually become sources of light when we practice sanyama.
That's such a beautiful image. It's like our senses become refined, more discerning.
Instead of being pulled in all directions by every little distraction, we can choose what we allow into our awareness.
We become more selective about what we consume, what we focus our attention on.
And that's where sanyama comes in. It's about cultivating that inner discipline to direct our senses towards things that nourish and uplift us.
And what's really fascinating is how sanyama is further defined in these texts as a combination of three key elements. You have dharana, which is the ability to focus and concentrate our attention. And then there's dhyana, which is the practice of sustained meditation. And finally, you have samadhi, which is this state of deep absorption and interconnectedness. So you have these three aspects, and together they represent a system for regulating our inner energies, for bringing them into a state of harmony.
And the analogy that's used in the text to illustrate this is so powerful. It's the difference between a raging wildfire, which is chaotic and destructive, and a steady, controlled candle flame.
Oh, I love that.
Right. So sanyama is like the process of transforming that inner wildfire into a steady, radiant flame.
It's about taking control of the fuel we're feeding that fire.
And making sure it nourishes and illuminates rather than consumes and destroys.
Beautifully put.
And then, after this whole deep dive into the various aspects of our inner fire, the sources bring it back to this really fundamental choice we all face. Are we going to be a source of light and warmth in the world? Or are we going to be a source of destruction and negativity?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. Are we going to create or destroy? Are we going to connect or divide?
And Gurudev's quote, which is highlighted in the material, really captures this beautifully. A feint creates light and the fragrance of love. It's such a powerful and evocative image.
It is. It suggests that when we do this inner work, when we learn to master our energies through practices like sanyama, that's when we become a source of light for others.
That's when we radiate that warmth, that love, that understanding.
And it really comes down to making conscious choices in our everyday lives, being mindful of what we allow into our senses, actively transforming our anger into understanding, managing our desires, and speaking with intention and kindness.
It's a daily practice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about those little choices we make moment to moment.
It is. And the sources actually offer some very practical advice for cultivating this positive inner fire. It all starts with mindful consumption, being aware of what we watch, what we listen to, the kinds of conversations we engage in.
And choosing content and connections that uplift and inspire us.
Exactly. It's about being selective about the information and influences we allow into our minds.
Because negativity can be contagious, right?
It can. And then there's this crucial step of actively transforming anger into awareness. So instead of letting anger control us, we can learn to use it as an opportunity for growth.
Like using those tools we talked about. Deep breathing, expressing our anger in healthy ways.
Right. Whether it's through writing, physical activity, talking to a trusted friend, it's about finding healthy outlets for that energy.
And then finally, there's the importance of engaging in those purifying practices that help to sustain our inner light. Things like meditation, selfless service, and cultivating an attitude of gratitude.
These are the practices that help us stay grounded, stay connected to that source of inner peace.
It's like tending to our inner garden, making sure it's well-nourished and flourishing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment for some personal reflection. Echoing the invitation offered in these texts. What kind of inner fire are you cultivating in your life right now?
Are you feeding it negativity, or are you choosing to nourish it with positivity?
Are you letting it burn wildly out of control, or are you learning to channel it with intention and purpose?
It really comes down to those choices we make each and every day.
It does. And remember Gurudev's beautiful words. A saint creates light and the fragrance of love.
By embracing mindfulness, by practicing sanyama, by engaging in those uplifting activities, we all have the potential to become a source of warmth, clarity, and love in the world.
Let's all strive, as these sources encourage us to do, to be like the flame of camphor, willingly burning away our own ego and negativity while spreading light and fragrance to everyone around us.
It's a beautiful image.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the transformative power of our inner fire.
It's been a pleasure exploring these teachings with you.
And if these insights resonated with you, please share them with someone who might also benefit. Let's keep that fire of wisdom burning brightly. And until next time, stay mindful, stay inspired, and keep echoing the beautiful source of truth that resides within you.